Which do you think is greater, addition or multiplication? Matthew 28, Jesus says this in chapter 28, verse 19. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations. And as you know, I like to translate that, go make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. And then in another familiar passage in 2 Timothy 2:2, Paul takes the same concept but says it this way, and the things that you, talking to Timothy, and the things that you've heard from me among many witnesses, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. So there's an ongoing multiplication. So the question is today, which do you think will have a greater impact, preaching or disciple making? So for example, years ago, the Billy Graham organization, and I love Billy Graham, one of my heroes. But they basically, over the years, as they did crusades, these large meetings with thousands of people all over the world, they basically said that you can count on, if you preach to a crowd of 100,000 people, 4% of the people are going to come to know Christ. That's pretty much was the average. So let's say in your church or any church here in Dallas or around the country, if your church you go to and your preacher were to preach to 100,000 people per day, now you get pretty fired up about that. 4% came to Christ. That's 4,000 coming to know the Lord daily. If you did that for 365 days a year, that'd be 1,460,000. If you did that for 16 years, that would be 23,360,000. So that's the preaching model. Pretty much what would happen. And by the way, I'm just going to talk about Dallas, Texas. We've got some of the greatest churches, some of the greatest preaching in America. If preaching was going to change the city of Dallas, Texas, it should have already been changed, but it hasn't. Now, let's look at the disciple-making model. If you were to take 2 people a year and disciple them and get them ready to disciple someone else, and if you went through, let's say, our 4 priority book that we highly recommend, and if you did that for a year with 2 people, at the end of that year, they then each spin off, and each of them take 2, and you take 2 new people. If that was just you doing that, and you did that for 10 years, at the end of 10 years, you would have 59,049 individuals that had been discipled and were getting ready to disciple. 59,000 just with one person taking 2 people. If you had in a church 10 people that said, sign me up, I'm going to make disciples, I'll take 2 a year, and I'll get them ready to do the same. Now this is obviously, if there's no attrition or fallout, this would be the result. If you did that with 10 people taking 2 a year, and everybody replicates at the end of 10 years, you'd have 590,000 people. In a church of say, a size where you could handpick 100 people that would take 2 a year, and you did that for 10 years, you'd have 5,904,000 people. Do you see what I'm saying? There is no plan that makes the impact that disciple making makes. Jesus' plan to change the planet is disciple making. So the question is, are you making disciples who are making disciples? You think about that. And think about that seriously.